Okay, so we're back and now we're doing the wheels. So let's add a cylinder. Okay, so now we're going to go into one, and obviously this picture is much bigger. So let's shrink this down to here. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to shrink it on the Z axis. So I'm going to GZ here. That's still too big. And I'm going to shrink it down. So how do I get this shape? I want this to be the shape. So first I have to make sure, because I'm going to be doing a lot of beveling, I'm going to apply rotation and scale. I'm going to tab in. And here I have all the faces of the cylinder. I'm going to do a loop cut, Control R, and I'm just going to scale that down. And then to make that rounded edge, again, if I was worried about how much geometry I was having, I might just leave it like that, or do a bevel where it's just one, because who cares? But I like this, so I'm going to do it like that. And then I'm actually going to select these two edges. I'm going to bevel those because we actually know what those look like. I can see that the top edge and the bottom edge are smaller, so I'm going to select those again, and I'm going to just scale them. And now we have pretty much exactly that design. I could bevel it further, but I think that's what it looks like. Oh, and now I'm going to mention something here, since this was so easy to do. See all these faces? You can see all the facets of the faces. I'm going to shade auto smooth here. And you can see on here now all of those faces have changed. I'm going to shade auto smooth on here as well. You can still see, if you zoom in, you can still see the actual outline, but it shades it smooth. It's totally fine. And especially on a smaller object like this, you're not going to see it. If I was really concerned, I would add a subsurf modifier and add a little more geometry so they retain their shape, but I don't need to. This is perfectly fine for the object I'm making. Now this object here, I want to mirror it. And now I'm going to change its origin to the 3D cursor, which I know is at the world center. And now I can hit Auto Mirror Z positive and it'll add it there. So now I have that geometry. What I want to do here is I'm going to talk about materials. So if you click on the corner here and you see a little plus, I can pull this up and create another screen. I'm going to go to a shader editor here. And this object, as you can see, has no materials. In fact, we have no materials at all in the scene. If I click here, you'll see there's nothing. So I have zero material. So I'm going to create a new material. I want to create a wood material here. It's very hard to recreate this kind of grain on the object, but we're going to try. Again, there is a plugin called Node Wrangler. Let's see if I can find it, if it's down here. Here's Node Wrangler. This comes inside Blender. You can use it. All you have to do is come in here and check it and it'll be turned on. It's a very useful thing, especially for making textures, because you need to bring in all the textures and make sure they're all scaled correctly, and you want to be able to orient them the same way. Click on your principled BSDF and you hit Control-Shift-T. So this is my textures folder. I have it in my bookmarks. And I want to use some wood. Let's see what wood I want to use. Let's see, rough wood grain. Let's try that. These few. I don't need my rough. Oh, I'll add roughness. Why not? So if I click Add Principled Textured Set, which is what I requested, it brings in all of my textures with a giant mapping node, so I can rotate it if I want. That's how you make a material. And that's going to be the main material we're using for right now, so that's all I'm going to do. Bringing this material in and creating that material for these was perfect. But you will see if I try to apply the same material to this sandwich part of it, it doesn't look right. And there are a number of reasons why it doesn't look right. One of them is because this is still mirrored. So now would be a good time to go into UV unwrapping. UV unwrapping is a little complicated, and there's a whole tab for it here. If you understand UV wrapping, you will see that this is actually incredibly easy. But first, I'm going to click this object and I'm going to go to modifiers and I'm going to apply its mirror. because that way when I apply the material, it won't be mirrored. See, this is book matched here. I don't need this edge, so I'm going to dissolve this edge. I'm going to dissolve this edge too. I don't need it. It's too much geometry. And this edge, I'm going to just GZ. UV unwrapping. There are great videos, educational videos about it. I recommend you watch them. Andrew Price has great videos. Blender Guru. Grant Abbott has great videos about it. What we want to do, a UV wrap, is, if you can imagine like a chocolate Santa Claus or a chocolate Easter Bunny, they have that foil wrapping around them, and there's an image on that foil, and it's Santa with his beard and a hat and his cheerful, his red and white suit. And that's printed on a flat piece of foil. One way to imagine that is that this is that piece of foil, and you want to wrap this around this object that is not flat. So you need to figure out how to wrap it well. This is most materials that you'll find online, and I recommend you go to Andrew Price's store, Polygon. Excellent, Poliigon. Excellent resource for textures. I need now to map this. So I know that I want the grain to run here along this side, because they wouldn't cut it end to end on this bias. So I know I want it, the long way is this way, is strong. So I want it to look a little bit like this, but I don't want it to look like that. So I'm going to deselect this. I'm using Control plus and minus. So let me do UV unwrap. I don't like it. Let's do cube projection. That's much better. So you can see, but now it's running, the end grain is running north-south here. That's not how it would be. So I'm going to go in here. I click A for all, R90. This looks pretty solid. Now these faces look like trash. So now I'm going to select these guys. To do that, I'm going to hide these. I'm going to hide this, and I'm going to hide these. And I'm going to go to 7. And what's great about this is I can go UV, project from view. And now I have that. I'm going to rotate this, A, R90. I think that's more the way it would look. And I'm going to do the same thing here too. And you can see I wasn't that careful filling in this cylinder, but I'm going to again do project from view and AR90. All right, so now my hamburger patty looks like a reasonable piece of wood. This is absolutely reasonable looking to me. So now I'm going to do Alt H. I'll bring everything back. And now I'm going to go into my hamburger patty here. I only have this, so I know I want this to look like this. See, here's an interesting thing. I'm just going to point this out for the UV unwrapping aspect. This is still a cube to Blender's mind. It has this face here is the top of the cube between these 4 quads, these 4 points. And the rest is still a cube that's projected around it. But I've applied the scale so it knows that those faces are small, but it hasn't been able to figure out how to unwrap it into that oval shape. So now if I go to UV, with all of this selected, I go to UV, I could do cube projection, but I'm going to do project from view. And now I have that in the thing, and I need to apply my material. And as you can see, it's running the wrong direction. I don't know why I do that, but why Blender does it, but it does it. So now I have, oh, but look, you know, actually, what's a little weird, let's tab back into that. This looks weird, but it's only because it's a little stretched on the edges, but that's actually appropriate. Because look at the actual object here. So let's go back here. I'm going to tab in here. I'm going to select all, and I'm just going to scale this up. And actually, that looks a lot like what this piece looks like. You can see we've got some stretching of the end grain here. And it's pretty straight up and down that way. I might make it a little bit larger. This guy, let's see what Blender does. This is always a challenge when you're UV mapping. So I'm going to tab in. I'm going to select all, and wow, look at what it thinks it looks like. Holy smoke! So for this, let's try Smart UV Project, because I don't even know how to start. Otherwise, hey, that looks pretty good. So now let's add this material. That's correct. That's correct. Hey, did a perfect job. Usually it doesn't do that great a job, but this looks perfectly good to me. So we now have this object looking extremely realistic. I'm going to go back to my layout mode because that's what I prefer. And I'm going to go into my viewport shading of rendered. So now this looks a lot like my block. So now we've done our UV unwrapping for the wood. We're going to face some challenges because we have to do some cuts here. As I said, we have to cut out these grooves. We have a notch in the bottom and we have to cut these out. And then we need to put in these nails. So I will see you in the next video where we are going to be creating these cutting objects.